Okay, I will call to order the Ravenna City Council meeting for Monday, February 1st at 7:01 p.m. The first item on the agenda is a moment of meditation and silence. And Mr. Calfee, if you would, do you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be glad to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And Chelsea, would you call the roll?
Calfee,
Here.
Ms. West,
Here.
Mr. Moskin, Ms. Michael,
Here.
Mr. Karras,
Here.
Ms. Wood,
Here.
Mr. Harper.
Here.
And just in case, do we have a motion to excuse Mr. Moskin?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the regular city council meeting of January 4th. Was there any additions, corrections to those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Communications, Chelsea, I don't know if you want to go over this or if you want me to quickly.
Sure. Council really received a letter from residents on Beecher Avenue objecting to the barbed wire fence approval at CNC Meats.
Andrew, if you're talking, we've lost the volume.
Thank you. So that was the only communications. This is a letter that we all received before. Other than that, was there any comments that want to be made about? Yeah. The law director wants to speak to it real quick.
He had contacted me. I first talked to Amy about it as far as where they were. The issue basically would be an appeal under 2506 of the revised code to the Court of Common Pleas. I explained that to her. She got back to me and said, well, this happened back in October. And I indicated that the 30-day time period, was the time period within which the appeal had to be filed. Obviously, it was long gone. So that was my last communications with her in that regard. Thank you.
The only thing that I would suggest for future is that, we get, Chelsea gets it and forwards stuff like this to us to make sure we see it. And I think that council, the ward council person or at large seat should actually go to some of these houses and knock on the door to make sure that they are aware of something like this that's going to be happening in their neighborhood. Unfortunately, there's really no way of us knowing if these residents, we're just only going by the mail. And, some of the residents, we don't really know if they've received the letters warning them. So, or, letting them know what is coming into their area. So I think something like this, we need to have a little bit stronger communication. And I think it's up to us to ensure that they did receive this, and so that they do have an opportunity to come and speak to BZA, because this was a decision that was made by BZA, not City Council.
Just to quickly add to that too, I did ask Jenny, who's been kind enough to add us to the outgoing agendas for some of the meetings coming up. So you should have all received the meeting notice for the end of this month for, I believe, planning it was. So moving forward, we should be included in that as well. All right. And just no delegations from the public?
Nope.
Okay. You all should have received the report of officials. Were there any questions, concerns about those? Or do we have a motion to accept as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Committee meetings will be next week on the 8th at 5:30 p.m., starting with utilities. Mr. Moskin is not here. To be determined, I guess, if they have anything on the agenda. The next is information systems, Ms. West.
Nothing on the agenda for tonight and nothing as of yet for committee meetings.
Thank you. Planning, Mr. Karras.
3 items for consideration tonight, and we will be having a meeting on Monday.
Committee of the Whole will be on February 16th at 7 p.m. That's a Tuesday. Next one is Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, we have 3 items tonight, and we usually do have something on our agenda. Right now, I don't have anything, but I'm assuming we will have something.
Thanks. Personnel, Mr. Calfee.
Nothing scheduled for personnel.
Thanks. Community and Economic Development, Ms. Wood.
We have 1 item tonight and to be determined for committees.
Thank you. Mr. Harper, do you have a brief kind of high-level view of cemetery, what's going on there?
We actually did not meet last Friday due to illnesses and quarantines. We were not able to meet. That being said, I have no new updates at this time.
Thank you.
Other than the correct calculations based on the property taxable values for the city and the township are going to be used this year for the calculations. So that should help with the budget constraints.
And I'm sure we'll have some updates with the cemetery forthcoming for everybody, including the joint meeting. But if we could, we'll move on to the first reading of ordinances, beginning with ordinance number 2021-10.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for the FY 2020 assistance to firefighters grant, AFG, through Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for the purchase of new EMS equipment, a new fire engine, and the replacement of equipment in the fire department, and declaring an emergency.
Thanks. And it sounds like Chelsea's breaking up, so we'll try and see if we can get that fixed. But in the meantime, this is Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, we did talk about this in length in committee. I do have Mr. Chappell online if anyone has any additional questions. This does require a 5% match. So, and it's not to exceed $3,500 from the CI fund. Anybody have any questions?
Well, do we have a motion to waive the rules then?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfie,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin, Mr. Karras,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Karras,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfie,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin, Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Muskin, Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-11.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for the 2021 grant through the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of the State Fire Marshal for fire department equipment and declaring an emergency.
And this is also, Amy, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, this also was talked about. This is actually for turnout gear, helmets and boots. There is no match and the cap is 15. Any questions?
Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the rules?
so moved. Second,
Second.
Sorry, who was second?
I second it. Christina so moved it.
Thank you. Ms. West,
yes,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-12.
An ordinance approving the donation of 20 air packs to Mayston Center Fire Department, Mayston, New York, and declaring an emergency.
This is also public health and safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, this is some equipment that's actually going to be expiring pretty soon. We were fortunate enough to salvage a little bit of money from this as a donation to another department that would be using these actually for training gear. So it's, we're donating them to another district. And in return, we're getting a donation.
Any questions on this ordinance? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And to adopt the emergency clause?
So move.
second,
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
second,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right. That ordinance is adopted. Moving on to ordinance number 2021-13.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Portage County Public Defender to defend indigent defendants charged with crimes in the city of Ravenna for the year 2021 and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by Planning. Mr. Karas?
Yeah, this is the yearly contract we set up when people are charged with a municipal crime and can't afford legal representation, then we contract out for the public defenders. There's a $150 incident fee, and then any other fees are set out in the schedule that was put in place 20 years ago. It's the same provision, same exact contract we've signed for several years now.
Any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly, I'm sorry, Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-14.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant through the Ohio Public Works Commission's Clean Ohio Conservation Fund. And if awarded, to enter into a grant agreement with the Ohio Public Works Commission for the Wahoo Wetlands/Emerald Lake project and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by Planning. Mr. Karas?
Yeah, so we talked about this. This actually came up last summer. So there's property over off of Diamond Street in our southwest side of the city. Several acre, I can't remember the number of acres. And it's owned by R.R. Wellington. They have put in place some condominiums called Emerald Lake. And the land, I believe, was originally purchased to further develop, but they haven't really chosen to do that. So when we applied for a grant in the summer, it was a WRRSP grant, and we came close, but we did not get that grant, which didn't have any kind of matching funds and would have given us enough money to pay for the property. However, in applying for that grant, we had to expend some funds and we allocated some money to do appraisals and other kinds of remediation type work to get ready for the grant. So since we didn't get that grant, this is a second grant that does have matching funds. The interesting thing is we have a non-committal letter of intent from the property owners that if we did get this grant, there's a possibility that they would accept 75% of the appraised value, which was a little over $1 million. So we would be able to, assuming we could forge that negotiation with the current property owners, we could actually buy the land without any cost. So that's what this grant is all about. If we do get the grants, and there's another chance at that other grant in the summer, we would purchase the land and create kind of a conservation type park in that area. It is a bit complicated. We've talked about this in committee. We've been talking about it for months, and I think they've already actually applied for the grant, but part of the application is that city council have vote to approve and create an ordinance to actually apply for the grant. So that's where we are today. Any
Thanks, Rob.
questions? Well, that's your job. Sorry.
Any questions for Rob? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. Moving on to ordinance number 2021-15.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Quality Control Inspection Incorporated to provide inspection services for construction projects for the year 2021 and declaring an emergency.
This is also planning, Mr. Karas?
Yeah, we've entered in this contract in the past. It's for allowing for inspections for some of the construction projects we have in the city. The only change this year is there seemed to be a 3% differential. It's an interesting change. The hourly rate for regular work, non-overtime, went up 3%, but the overtime work went down 3%. But it's about $60 an hour for this type of service. So that's pretty much what it entails.
Any questions on this ordinance? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin, Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Moving on to ordinance number 2021-16.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a housing revolving loan fund administration agreement with the state of Ohio, Ohio Development Services Agency as required by the state of Ohio and declaring an emergency.
Thanks, Chelsea. And this is sponsored by Community and Economic Development.
Yes. First, I'd like to note a correction. that it is this particular RLF agreement is for the economic development RLF. And the reason that needs corrected is there's numerous different RLFs and they all have their own agreements. This is a requirement by the Ohio Development Services Agency as long as we administer the community development block grant funds and economic development program within those funds. It's housekeeping. We've done it for years and it just needs to be updated.
Can you read the ordinance that we need to amend the ordinance if there's an incorrection or a correction to be made? So do you have the wording that this should be? Or Mayor, I don't know if you can.
It could just be an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund Administration Agreement with the State of Ohio, Ohio Development Services Agency.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion to amend the current ordinance then? Sorry, I was writing this down.
So moved. I make a motion.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes,
Mr. Muskin,
Yes.
Mr. Garris,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to, well, does anybody have any questions on this before we?
Andrew,
Yes.
the first whereas is incorrect also. It should say economic development funds.
One, as Frank was saying, this is the law director. We're gonna have to amend 1 and 2 then. Section 1 and 2.
We're gonna strike in the title, housing, and put in economic development. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, Cheryl, it sounds like you said yeah too. So just to repeat what he was saying, we're going to strike housing everywhere in here and replace it with economic development in each section. So
That would also be in section 1.
Section 1, and then there's also, okay. All right. Well, do we have a motion to accept the other two or other amendment then, just to clarify? I want to make sure that that is voted on.
So move.
second,
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Muskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karras,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Any additional corrections to this ordinance? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Muskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karras.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The last item on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-17.
An ordinance approving the transfers and advances for the month of December 2020 listed on Exhibit A attached here too and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by the finance director, who is out of town, but there was only one item on the agenda, or on the, excuse me, on the approval this evening. Were there any questions on that? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. Is there any old or new business to come before council this evening?
I think we only did 2.
Excuse me. Do we have a, thank you, a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance is adopted now. Is there any other old or new business to come before council this evening?
I have new business, Andrew. I would like to recommend putting together a subcommittee to start the zoning review and update process, working with Mr. Finney and anyone else that the mayor or Mr. Finney would see fit, as well as you, to get this process started.
Yeah, I think it's a good suggestion, one that's been discussed over and over. I had a brief discussion with Mr. Finney on a small group that might get together. And keeping that a small group, I think, is the key word right now, to at least take a look at the zoning map changes and then zoning code changes as well. So I think that we've talked about taking up, and then we'll see about a timeline and roll that out with the rest of council, make everyone aware. Yeah, I think it's been discussed and it will be on. Yeah. Mr. Finney, is there anything you want to add on that, or you want to discuss this later and bring it to a later meeting?
As Cheryl and Dennis and I discussed, there's so much involved when you say zoning, changing zoning, rewriting zoning, due to the different land uses that we have, and then also the direction that the city would like to go. We discussed many, Cheryl, Dennis and I discussed many items. I believe that we were interested in starting with the central business district first. But with that, at committee next week, I'm going to propose an immediate change to property that abuts the central business district. It's a parcel of land that is potentially being purchased that can have a large impact if we don't change the zoning. So as we had discussed, the smaller the group, I believe will move things forward. But in the end, city council gets to adopt whatever the recommendations are. But this is a daunting task that is going to take quite some time. That's pretty much all.
And the sooner the better. So I agree with Cheryl. I think
without going into a long discussion right now, again, there's just so many. I think each one of us, when we hear zoning rewrite, we all have a different perspective of what we're talking about. And I think I believe that we may be disappointed in some of our decisions because we're not. Zoning rewrite, for instance, isn't fencing. Fencing's not even in the zoning code. Fencing is in chapter 14.
Right.
So, but again, so we're going to get to those things. Zoning is land use in essence. So there needs to be updates, and we need to update. Just looking back over the last 10 years, how our society has changed. We haven't kept up with that. And the direction that we think we might be going, our society, not just city of Ravenna, but in general. So that's something that, maybe as we have the charter review every 5 years, maybe we need a zoning review every 5 years or something of that nature. So
Yeah,
anyway,
don't know if
we'll further discuss it.
I agree 100%. I think it's long overdue to review our zoning. We need to be more strategic, thinking about what our zoning means, as Bob said, for current status of how we want to use our land. I'm not in favor of spot zoning, but that's what we end up doing when we delay planning efforts for too long. So this is long overdue. I don't think it's going to take. I think it's going to take a lot of time and effort. If we're going to do a little bit of an overhaul, there's going to be public hearings involved and so forth. But I'm glad this was brought up because I think this is something we really need to do. And I assume it'll go through the planning committee to establish the subcommittee. I mean, planning is typically where zoning type issues appear. Just wanted some clarification of the process.
Yeah, I agree. It would go through planning committee. I believe CED would possibly have some involvement as far as land use, possibly, or at least maybe joint together, committees together.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it should be. I agree. I think economic development is a big piece of it. Not only what we do necessarily with our ordinances, but some of the other incentive things we might be able to do for home ownership and expansion of the possibility of improving people's homes and so forth. And I do think that we want to include, if we can, some input from some of the other bodies like the Planning Commission and maybe the Design Review Commission as well. Not to say that we have to create, like Andrew said, this probably should be at least at the beginning a smaller group, but over time I think it would be helpful to get their input.
I think getting input from several entities we have to. I mean, it's the intelligent thing to do. But as far as the subcommittee members go, I think that that can be a smaller group that receives that input and implements it as how they see fit.
And this will be an ongoing discussion, so we'll circle back with everyone to at least update the rest of council on the direction of this conversation and how it unfolds. Was there any other new business or old to come before council? Well, I don't want to take up too much time, so I just wanted to mention a couple things. Cheryl already mentioned zoning. thank Bob Finney. I think an ongoing discussion with the speed around the city. He's been in contact with AMATs, and I think there will be more details coming out about some solutions there, possible solutions. So thank you to Mr. Finney and the engineering department for reaching out to AMATs on some of that. Also on the Freedom Street project, I don't know, Mr. Calfee, did you intend on speaking about this tonight?
No, I did not.
Speaking with Mr. Finney, I think right now they're just going to contact the homeowners along Freedom to engage them in this process and get their thoughts on possible solutions for the brick there.
Andrew,
yeah, go ahead.
I have talked to a couple of the homeowners on Freedom Street, and the couple that I did speak with were not in favor of removing the bricks. So that was only a couple at this point.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll get some, or at least the engineering department will get some feedback here soon. But then just to reiterate what they've been saying too, this is not a project that they plan on, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Finney, this is not a project that they plan on tackling this year at all, just to kind of at least begin the conversation about this. So.
Correct. It would be next year or the following year, however we could pull it together.
Okay.
I actually had a suggestion from another resident who watched the meeting online and had approached me. And just to briefly bring this up, on Sycamore Street, he thought that would actually make more sense to get rid of the bricks there because of the water project that went on there, and it's kind of uneven. He said that possibly you could take the bricks from there and salvage those to use where needed on Freedom Street. So that was just an idea that was brought to my attention. But they said if you were going to get rid of any, that would be the one they would suggest to do. So I'm just passing it along.
And I just want to mention
removing the bricks and having them break.
Pardon me?
Oh, the concern is if we remove the old bricks, will they break? That's the concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's all.
I understand.
All right. I just want to mention one more thing that we all got an email, but I guess just for everyone else, there is a blood drive this Thursday, 12:30 to 6:30, and it seemed pretty urgent in the email. So for council, if there's anybody that you can forward that to, send that off. But it is 12:30 to 6:30 this Thursday at the library. So that's all I will say in my remarks. I don't really have anything scheduled to say, but let's start just down the roster here with Mr. Calfee. If there's anything you wanted to mention this evening?
No comments from me tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Miss West?
A couple things quickly as far as the blood drive goes. I believe you have to have an appointment to be able to go.
Yeah.
I go every 6 weeks and they're always packed. So to make sure you download the app and get the blood and do that. The one thing I did want to mention is I've seen a lot of talk on social media about the Oak Rubber building, and I just wanted to speak and say, obviously this is something you guys talked about even before I was on council. And when we talked about removing the debris from the building, I went and toured the building with Dennis. And there was a lot of history in there. So I was kind of upset by that because, there's a lot of Ravenna in there. So I had the Historical Society come in and take pictures. They took pictures overhead. They did, the drone shots. So we have all of that available. They're putting that together. Tyler Maravich did it for us. A lot of people were upset because the building's being torn down. It was not salvageable. There's no way we could have saved that building. And I understand that it's a piece of history, but I'm hopeful that our residents know that we did get in there and take some of that history, at least in pictures, so we have it. And we're going to be putting that out pretty soon. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Mr. Moskin, is there anything you wanted to mention this evening?
No, there isn't.
Thanks for hopping on. I apologize about the invite. Ms. Michael, is there anything you want to mention this evening?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Karas?
Nothing specific. I did want to thank the engineering department. They did a small little study of speed on Highland last week, and it was pretty small, but it provided some data as we start thinking about the traffic calming issues. So anyway, thanks for that.
And Ms. Wood?
The only thing that I want to mention is any of our storefront building owners in the central business district that you have vacant units, make sure that their doors are secure. It has been brought to my attention that there are some homeless people that have found their way into some of these vacant areas, and they've even found their way into some of the basement areas in these buildings. So just make sure your doors are secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Harper? Anything you'd like to say this evening?
No comment this evening. Thank you.
Thanks. Then we'll move on to the mayor's remarks.
Just a few things, Andrew. I'm going to be doing the State of the City address towards the end of February. Department heads are getting information together for me at this time, as well as the rest of the staff that works here in City Hall. I'll announce in a little while where it will be and how we'll do it. Last year we got it in before we had the pandemic. And I'm looking for a venue where we could still have people come and sit. And I've got a couple of places I can check with on that, but we're working on that. We did talk with Bill Steiner from the county recycling program, and recycling costs are going to go up. This is not something that we control. This is the county's charges, but he did tell us to, and we'll let you know as soon as we know how much it's going to be. The last time it was raised a quarter, but I'm gathering that the financial situation of that project is going to require more than a quarter. We work daily with the pandemic, and now the vaccines are on the front burner. The state of Ohio has its own way of doing this, and basically the governor is handing out the vaccines based on the most vulnerable. He got them first with that. I'm very hopeful that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine gets out, and I think that could help us a lot. It's a one shot and it doesn't require excessive refrigeration. Its effectiveness on getting the illness is, I think, about 10 points below the other two, but it's been 100% effective on deaths and hospitalization. So I'm excited about that, and I think it'll be easier to give with that. I am still very concerned from what I'm hearing about this, that we are headed into tonight. They were talking about the dark winter is ahead of us, and it's because of the mutations that are coming, starting to show up, that they believe that's going to have a heavy effect on us before we begin to pull out of this. The numbers I know have been coming down, but they are projecting shortly that they're going to be going up again. So we adjust to these things every day to try and keep our people healthy here so that we can continue to provide the full services that the citizens become accustomed to. And I think I'll stop at that point right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And just to add real quick, the Zoom meetings we'll let you know about next week for committee. This week, I think most of council tested, if not all of council at least tested out the Cisco WebEx system. this upcoming week. I think the mayor's administration is going to test it out, and hopefully we can check that box here pretty soon. So if there's nothing else, then I will, ask for a motion to adjourn until March 1st. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.